Well, chat, welcome in, everybody. This is Alyssa Villaire.
Hello, everybody.
She is the author of The Glittering Edge, our book of the month so far. So again, guys, this is The Glittering Edge. This is an amazing story. It was in our book club. We've already given out some stars here because that's what we do in our book club. In our book club, we grew up on stars. Like Pizza Hut gave us stars, and we get to do that. So we're taking it back now because like kids have had it too good for too long.
That's right. That's right. We deserve our stars too.
Exactly. You are a debut author, so you're the first person that we've had that's actually a debut author. So I think the story that you have, as far as your journey to get from the beginning to your book to ours is to print is a little bit different. So can you explain the process of like how you got here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how much time do you have?
We got plenty of time.
It was a very long process. You know, I really took my time with this story. I had the initial idea right around the time that the pandemic began. And up until that point, I was very much exclusively working on super dark, like high fantasy stories, which I loved and still love. But I had written 2 books by that point. I hadn't tried to get a literary agent. With both of those books, it just felt like neither of them was ready. Neither of those were the books that I wanted to try to get published or that I would want on shelves with my name on them. I knew I could do better, which it sounds kind of vague, but that's the feeling I had. I was like, I know I can do better. These books taught me a lot. It's time to move on and do something different. When the pandemic began, so I'm originally from the Midwest. I grew up in small town Indiana, much like Penny, Corey, and Alonzo.
Okay.
And I also grew up watching like supernatural shows, horror shows. I was always very into like practical magic or Charmed and the Raven Cycle a little bit later. And so during the pandemic, I had an idea for a book that was like, okay, you know, here I am. I'm out on the West Coast now. I live in Los Angeles. I'm missing the Midwest terribly, where my family still lives. So I was thinking about that. I was thinking about the stories that brought me comfort as I was growing up, like the very sort of cozy, witchy stories. And this idea was sort of born out of that. And so I started writing during the pandemic. And then about 1.5 years in, I think I had done 4 drafts of this book. And then I decided to query literary agents. And that was an interesting process. I queried an initial like small batch just to see if anyone gave me any positive responses. And I did get some positive responses, no offers, but some feedback. And so I took that feedback. I did get another draft of the book, and then I queried again a few months later. And that's when I signed with my literary agents, who are Pete Knapp and Stupi Telly-Devara at Park Fine and Brower. And then we revised for another 1.5 years. So this was a very long process. They are very editorial agents, and I love them for that because they made the book so much better. And it also meant that once we went on submission, we went to auction within about a month. And that's how we sold this duology. And then there was more revising, plus the whole design process. And, you know, I tried to get good at social media, you know, still on that journey.
The problem with social media is that you get somewhat good at something and then they change the algorithm and then you have to completely like relearn everything every 6 months to a year.
Exactly. That's exactly how it feels. Yeah.
One thing that I think a lot of people don't realize about traditional publishing is it's kind of a long process from getting your book signed and then the revisions and everything like that, and then there's placement times for your book. So it's not a matter of like, hey, I wrote this book and then next month we're going to print. It's like, that's not a thing.
Totally.
So
no, that's totally true. Yeah, did you want me to talk a little bit more about that?
So like from the day you got your book like finished, how long did it take from the book to getting finished to actually like?
Yeah, do you mean finished like I finished
Yes.
revisions with my editor?
Yes.
So generally in traditional publishing, you have to finish your edits with your editor about a year before the book is published. So I finalized edits on The Glittering Edge in spring of 2024. But even after that, there were some more changes that needed to be made just during copy edits. So I had a different team of copy editors who went through the book like with a fine tooth comb. They made basically an entire sort of like I call it like a Wikipedia for the book. Like they like listed out every single term that I use. They wrote out little bios for each of the characters, talked about the magic system and how that works. So that all happened like a few months after I finished revisions, but yeah, it's generally you have to have the book done a year out. So that's why I am like revising and will very soon be finishing book 2 of the series.
I ooh, like immediately.
Well, you readers keep saying, they're like, oh my god, I need to know what happens, which is so nice that readers like care, you know, that readers are like actually experiencing the story and concerned about the characters. So I'm working on it.
Yeah, it's you become your own worst enemy, where it's just like, oh man, this book was so good. Now where's the next book? And it's like, it took years to get to this point, and now you're just like, oh yeah, book now, second book, just.
And then people read it in like 4 hours, and they're like, oh, the next one. Like, oh, okay.
It's like, yeah, I finished this in like 4 hours, so now when's the next book? Is it coming out like next month? It's like, it took years to get here.
Totally. Well, and I think the timeline is getting a little distorted too, because sometimes when you have like self-published or whatever, like self-published, I guess, authors who are moving to traditional publishing, they already have a few books written because maybe they've been working on the series for a while, and so it's like they're able to release a few books in quick succession. But then like I'm thinking of Pen Cole's series. The first book is Spark of the Everflame. I can't remember exactly what the whole series is called, but I don't know if she self-published or what the story was there, but I think a few of the books are already out, but they all like traditionally published within the last like year or so. And then now people are waiting on book 4, which isn't going to come out until some indeterminate time in 2026.
Yeah, that's kind of how it is with Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing came out like very, very quickly, the first 3 books, and now she's like, hey, I'm taking 2 years off now, so you'll get it in 2027.
Right, which, like, you know what, Rebecca, go take that time off. You deserve it. You've had a lot on your plate, but also all the readers are like aching for the next book.
Yeah. So Polsky asks, is it expensive to get a book published? Hypothetically, you're a low-income writer, your hopes are being published. I can actually answer this one. No, you should not ever pay to have your book published through a traditional author. If you have to pay a traditional, quote-unquote traditional author to pay, not a trad publisher, it's most likely a hybrid publisher or a scam.
Exactly.
The costs that are involved in getting your book edited that are taken care of by a traditional publisher.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And actually, they should be paying you. Like, they should be paying you your advance upfront, which is a reflection of how well they believe your book is going to sell. So advances vary widely, of course, but yeah, so they'll pay you, and that's also how your literary agents get paid. Like, you should never be paying a literary agent ever. They get paid when you get paid. So generally in your contract, it will state that your literary agent gets X percentage of whatever you make on your books. So like in my case, in the US, it's like my agents get 15% of my US advances, and then it's a little more thorny for international deals, but that's the standard.
So do you have different literary agents depending on the region that you're in?
Yeah, so my US literary agents, my main literary agents work with co-agents generally. So like in the UK, so The Glittering Edge is also published in the UK with Penguin Random House. And I have a UK co-agent over there who my agents actually basically signed with to work with and have worked with on multiple books. And so I didn't have to separately query in the UK. My literary agents got that co-agent for me. And then like they'll get, you know, a percentage of my advance as well when they sell in the UK.
Okay. That's something I didn't know. So yeah, everybody's talking about how much they love Practical Magic. So yeah, if you haven't read this book yet, I definitely suggest reading it. I think it was the second chapter when you were introducing the mom. Like I had music playing in my head because if anybody's watched Practical Magic, the music that starts playing, because the way you described Anita very much felt like the opening scene to Practical Magic.
Oh, that is so kind. Thank you. I mean, it was such a huge inspiration. I think I grew up watching that movie so many times, and even now, every time the weather gets like a little tiny bit chillier, or I'm in LA, so just every time September hits, I'm like, it's time to put it on loop. And so my poor husband has to watch Practical Magic multiple times every year. But I think what I loved about it growing up was just like, I mean, I loved the characters. I loved the very tight family units in the movie. And actually, I love the book too. I don't know if any of
I didn't know it was
your
actually a
viewers.
book.
Yeah, it was adapted from a book originally, and there are several more books in that universe. Highly recommend. It follows the movie somewhat closely. The characters are very similar, but one big difference is that in the book there's no family curse, and the family curse element in the movie was something that I always really loved.
I said I think I felt that kind of like was the thing that kind of like put the movie together.
Yeah, I think it gave it a very it gave it a lot more, I think, momentum and propulsion. Like in the book, the plot is like a little bit slower. You spend a lot more time just like with these characters. And then in the movie, I do feel like there's more momentum because of that curse storyline. But again, I very much love the book. It is kind of a different experience, so know that going into it. But again, the characters are all very similar. Yeah.
You mentioned that you've done other books or you've started to write books. So, like, what do you feel about the Glittering Edge that made you say, "This is the book that I want, like, my name on"?
That's a great question. Yeah, I remember very clearly writing the first draft of The Glittering Edge and thinking, oh my goodness, this isn't perfect. And it's still, to this day, the book you're holding in your hand is not perfect. And there are things I wish I could change, and I can't because it's out now. But I do remember thinking, oh, this is the best thing I've ever written. And this also just very much feels like me, because I was already at that time sort of thinking about the trajectory of my career. And there's so much that's out of our control in publishing. Like, you can't control if your book is going to be acquired by an editor. You can't control the sales, nothing like that. But when I was thinking about what kind of author I wanted to be, The Glittering Edge just felt like very representative of that, and I was very proud of it. It felt like the kind of story that I would have read growing up, that would have brought me sort of comfort, that would have given me an escape. So I was like, I just had a feeling. I was like, I think this is gonna be the one. I'm definitely gonna query literary agents. We'll see what happens, but I feel like it's gonna be the one, and it was.
Okay, so we're going to make you pick your favorite child. Who is your favorite character in the series, and why is it Nimble?
Thank you for answering for me, Paul. You are correct. Obviously, it's Nimble. She's smarter than literally all of the characters put together. No, but for real, Nimble is just like an amazing character. I have so enjoyed writing her in book 2 as well. And then in terms of the main 3, it is really hard to pick. I think all of the characters represent struggles that I've had throughout my life. And so I relate very deeply to each of them in different ways. And so for that reason, it was like a challenge, and it was very fun to write all of them. However, writing Alonzo's POV is very fun because he has such a distinct voice. He's so angry. He's so emotional. He's like my little emo baby. So it is very fun to write Alonzo.
Alonzo is my favorite character.
You're not alone in that. You're not alone in that.
Other than the Pet Cemetery cat, Nimble. I liked Nimble a lot, but yeah, it was. I remember messaging you. I was just like, "What's with the Pet Cemetery cat?" And you're like, "I didn't know."
Oh, amazing.
Alonzo did have an amazing storyline. I really liked it. Penny was really great. I came around on Corey. Corey was kind of irritating me at the beginning, but like there's a reason why he's so very skittish around Alonzo, and like there's a lot of history there. So it takes a while to kind of, at least for me, to warm up to Corey. Of the three characters, he was the hardest to deal with. But like once we got towards the end of the book, you brought that around very well, and I love the character arcs that you've created through the series. They're just a lot of fun, and they're very well thought out and fleshed out characters.
Oh.
I don't necessarily get with a lot of like brand new authors, because sometimes you do have these pitfalls that are coming through, and it was really nice having all of that together and getting those characters.
Thank you, Paul. That means a lot. I definitely spent a lot of time just trying to flesh out those character arcs, and I just thinking about, you know, each character's wants, their needs, their fears. Like that was a big part of the process that I tried to kind of weave in wherever I could. And I wanted them all to be very different and to be like experiencing very different challenges, but also the fact that they're all drawn together is the reason why they're able to grow past certain things, which they're still in the process of doing as of the end of book 1. But now I'm thinking about book 2, because that is going to be the final book in the series, and so I'm trying to kind of wrap things up.
So we're getting to the end of the book, and it's kind of an emotional experience for you that you get to spend so much time with these characters. Are you going to be... Do you feel like you're going to be missing these characters once the series is done? Because again, so it's a duology, so we already know that this book is done after book 2. Do you feel like you're going to miss your children?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's like I already miss them, and I'm still working on book 2. You know, it's like sometimes it was funny. I was talking to my friend Maya Hollis, who's also an author. She wrote Not About a Boy. Came out last year. It's an incredible book. It's a contemporary YA contemporary. Highly recommend it. But she was telling me how sometimes she'll walk by her bookshelf and she'll just like see her book on the bookshelf. She'll grab it off and she'll be like, "What are my kids up to today?" And she'll just like flip to a page and like start reading because she misses them. And that's exactly how I feel. I am such a big baby. Every time I finish a draft, I cry. I like ugly cry, because it's like I feel like I've put so much of myself into it. I'm also just exhausted generally, so that's part of it too. Like I'm always tired, but I'm like, oh my gosh, what a journey. I already miss working on this story. And so definitely I get very emotional, and I will miss these characters. And you know, I don't know what's going to happen with them in the future, if I'll get a chance to write more in this world, but, you know, I'm certainly open to that.
Okay, so I can give you a little bit of experience, at least from my end. I am a horror anthology writer. Like, I write short stories, right, but I'm also writing fantasy. So my best friend, who was also the co-author of our book and a co-host in our podcast, she laughs at how often I kill off characters in our horror stories. And through writing the fantasy book, I've come up to the one point where we actually have to murder somebody, and it's like it felt different, because it was just like this felt much more like a child to me. It was just like, well, now I have to crush its soul, and the writer saw it. It kind of really does, because it hits very, very different. So like I can completely understand with the whole concept of like they're your children, and it's tough to put them on a shelf and then never talk to them. So yeah, it can kind of get rough.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like you're spending so much time in these characters' heads, like figuring out their backstories, everything they've been through, watching them make mistakes, in some cases, watching them try to redeem themselves. And then sometimes you do end up at the end of their journey with them, right? And you're just like, oh, no, I love you. Like, you're like a real person to me. So, yeah, it's not an easy thing.
I think, though, that makes it to be a good story. If you miss them as a person, I think that you've created enough of a fleshed out character that it feels like I think in long stories like that, if you don't miss these characters, that I think you might have done a great enough job making the...
That is a great way of putting it, Paul. I totally agree with that. Because it's like if you're not missing them, is it that the character isn't maybe as multidimensional as they should be? Are they kind of a cliche? Were they more of a plot device than an actual character? Which is something I struggle a lot with. I think sometimes reading certain stories, like, especially with villains, it's like if the villain doesn't have a really fleshed out backstory, if they're just kind of cartoonish, I'm like not really that invested in what happens. And like, even when the villain dies, I want to feel something.
What is your approach to maintaining reader engagement while addressing the philosophical questions that you have in your book?
Oh, do I maintain reader engagement while I do that? I don't know. I guess I can tell you how I kept myself engaged, and maybe that will answer the question. But
Good.
I think with this book, because it was very much a pandemic book, and like I mentioned earlier, I was writing it partly to comfort myself, and also largely because I did want to get published. But I was like, okay, if I'm going to be spending so much time in this world while the world outside is sort of falling apart, I want there to be a lot of scenes that I just really look forward to writing. I really want to have fun with this book as much as I can, even though it is a fantasy and it does have its darker moments. It's got its intergenerational family trauma, things like that. So I made sure to include just like some set pieces that were just to me really fun. So like the drag show is one example. Like that was a scene I envisioned very early on. I knew I wanted to include bike polo, which was something I discovered while studying abroad in Argentina. Funny enough, like it's such a random connection, but
So that's a real thing.
at the time when what was that?
Bike polo is a real thing.
It is. It's a real thing. People
Okay.
do it. I think I was with a friend, and one of her friends was in a bike polo league, and so we just used to go and watch people play bike polo.
Okay, that was. I just assume you made that for the book. You're originally from the Midwest. What brought you to LA, and what do you feel is different in your journey between being in the Midwest and being in LA?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Indiana, lived there for like about 18 years. I went to college in Wisconsin and then lived in Michigan for a year. So very much have lived all over the Midwest. At that point, I was very much aching for a change. And most of the people I grew up with, if they wanted to move to a big city, they would move to Chicago. And Chicago is a great place to live, but it just never felt like my place. And so I was thinking originally of like moving out more in your direction, Paul. I was like, oh, maybe I'll go to New York. But then one of my close friends from high school was living in LA. She invited me to come visit her, and I said yes. And so I came out here and immediately fell in love with the city, which is kind of surprising because LA is quite different from the Midwest. And so I wasn't really expecting to be drawn to it per se. I think part of the reason I actually liked it is because a lot of LA feels just like so big and wide open, which is actually kind of similar to the Midwest in some ways. Like you have a lot, like you have like very spread out neighborhoods. It feels quite different from New York, right? And so I was like, let's just give this a try. And I'll see how it goes. And I was feeling very adventurous at the time. And so I moved out here, and that was like, gosh, it was almost 10 years ago now. So I've been here for quite a while, and I love it here. And it is my home. But when I think about home, generally the first place that comes to mind is Indiana. I still have family there. I have family in Wisconsin. I go back all the time. So, that's where I had my formative years. And, at the time when I was living there, it's not always easy growing up in a small town. I think I often felt kind of stuck. I felt very judged, which I think is a struggle that I very much put into the Glittering Edge. They're all three of the protagonists are dealing with the sort of judging eyes of the people of Idlewood, and it's very difficult to like evolve and become the person you want to be when everyone around you thinks that they know you and kind of projects what they think they know of you onto you. It kind of puts you in a little bit of a box. I even like I have vivid memories of like people in middle school who decided to try different like clothing styles or, you know, experiment a little bit with fashion, and people just like made fun of them because they're like, that's not you, you know, that's not the person you are. So that, yeah, those were challenging things growing up. Now that I don't live there, I very much appreciate it more and miss it, as I mentioned, and that's why I decided to set a story there, because like Indiana means so much to me, and I feel like to the end of my days I'm going to be an Indiana girl. But I also wanted to acknowledge, you know, that it's not that, like, it's very imperfect, and I in writing Idlewood and creating my own town, I wanted to create like a sort of an idealized version of the places where I grew up. It was much more diverse, much more accepting than some of the places where I lived. So it's kind of like, it's simultaneously like an ode to the places where I grew up, and it's also like, let's imagine a better future.
That can make a lot of sense. All right, so this one's a little controversial, so I just want to preface this one first. In the age of AI creeping into everything, how do you feel about writers using AI to edit or vamp up their stories?
Yeah, I don't support it. I will be honest. I understand that there are a lot of uses for AI. I'm not a person who thinks that like all AI should be banned. I think it's going to be, you know, part of our future. And I think we have to learn to work with it in an ethical way. But that being said, the writing process I do think of as more sacred. You know, if you're using AI to sort of like if you're asking it questions for research and things like that, like that's okay. Although I think we also have to keep in mind that often AI does not give us correct information, so we have to keep doing our own research. But in terms of like using it to revise or, like you said, vamp up the writing, that's for the writer to do. That's part of your job as a writer, and so that is not, in my mind, the job of AI.
Correct answer. I'm of that mindset too. I feel that the people trying to use AI to kind of speed up the process of getting to the books, I don't know if they necessarily want to be a writer. I think they just kind of want the aesthetics of having a book.
I completely agree with that. And I made a video on TikTok that sort of touches on this a little bit recently, because I was thinking about how it does feel like a lot of people, like you said, want the aesthetic of being a writer. You know, they want to like take the cute like coffee shop photos, which I do all the time, to be clear. Like the cute, like you're working in your coffee shop, you've got your matcha latte or whatever, and you're doing the job, you look cute. But they don't necessarily like want to put in the work, because most of the time when I'm writing, I don't know about you, Paul, but I'm just like, I'm kind of sweaty. I may or may not have showered. I'm sitting at my desk. It's like 12 or 1 a.m. I'm like full goblin mode, like hunched over my keyboard. My husband walks in and is like, why is your posture like that? Like, what are you doing? Like, that's so unhealthy. So writing is often not a glamorous process. It is rigorous. And I think we have to accept that that's a part of the process, instead of like trying to find a bunch of shortcuts.
Yeah, I do hear that a lot, because a lot of the arguments was like, oh, well, I want to use AI because like writing's hard. I'm like, yes, correct. Writing is hard.
Indeed. Indeed it is. Yes, we know. We know.
Yeah, but unfortunately, the people look at that as a shortcut. It's like, no, it's not. You just kind of have to get the job done. Unfortunately, it might take you longer, but it's just going to take you longer.
Yeah, and they have to be your words. I mean, if a sentence is shortened, it should be shortened because you felt that that was the right thing. I mean, I think if people keep using AI, it's going to sort of strip the voice also from writing, because you're not going to be the one making those little tweaks and changes to the book that are just in some ways just as important as the big picture, like character development, world building, all of that.
So looking back, do you think this book could have been written at another time, or is this kind of tied to your feelings about the pandemic or your time within the pandemic?
That's a great question. I do think it could have been written in another time. Although I think because of the pandemic, that's why I was able to devote so much time to it initially, because, you know, apart from Zooms with friends, like
nothing
I
else
was
going
very
on.
much stuck at home. Yeah. And so I think for that reason, I was able to just really focus in a way. But yeah, I don't think it's tied super closely to the pandemic. It's tied more closely to like my comfort stories and the things that I loved growing up, which are the same. Even now, like I still, rewatch Charmed, or I'm actually just starting to reread The Raven Cycle, which I'm very excited about. I was just in the mood for it, you know.
I think I'm rewatching Vampire Diaries.
I'm watching that for the first time. I
Oh,
had
really?
never seen it before. Oh, really? Yeah.
Where you at?
Yeah. I'm still in season 1.
Okay.
I watch shows so slowly. It literally took me about 7 years to watch Buffy with one of my friends, even though we started watching it in like 2016, 2017. Like, it was like watching it in real time. Like, I'm not very good at binging shows. So it's gonna take me a while to get through the Vampire Diaries, but so far I am absolutely loving it.
It gets really, really good. The
So
character
excited.
arcs that in that series are actually incredibly well done.
Oh man, I can't wait. I've just seen I've been trying to stay away from spoilers, but I've seen little hints of things on TikTok and Instagram, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like if that ends up being a relationship, how do we get there? Because I can't even see them together yet, you know? So I'm very excited for what's to come.
I think a lot of people that write or read dark romance grew up on the Vampire Diaries, and if you get to the end of the series, you're like, oh, this completely makes sense. I completely understand their reasoning on this.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't made that connection. Okay, I'll have to keep that in mind. Are you a dark romance reader?
I do some and some. I tend to go more towards the dark rom-com stuff, so like Butcher and Blackbird, Lights Out. I need levity. My chat talks often that I am the golden retriever, like just like Chihuahua energy. I just have a lot of like happy, super fun energy. So I can't go too far in. Like I'm not going to read Haunting Adeline or any of like the really dark books. Although we like one of the books that we are going to be talking about, not the next cycle, but the cycle after that, is written by a friend of mine, and that's a dark fantasy romance. And there's some tough things in that book. But yeah, I tend to stay a little bit more surface as far as dark romance. I'm a fantasy person, horror, thriller. So that's kind of where I live, but I'm not opposed to reading it. I just, for the books that I have read, I know I'm not a mafia person. Like mafia romances, that's not me.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I haven't read much dark romance myself. I agree that I don't think like Haunting Adeline would be for me based on what I've seen. And it's interesting now because it's like I mentioned I used to write like much darker fantasy, and that always had a very strong romance element. And now I'm working on like a high fantasy project. I don't know if it's ever going to come out, but it's just something that I am really enjoying working on. And it is a little bit darker, but even now I'm like, oh no, but I have to make some jokes. I have to have some fun. This can't just be kind of like all dark, all sort of one note. It has to have like moments of levity, like you said.
It can't be Edward Cullen first movie. Dark and just like
no.
fruity, and it's like
no.
we need.
I need a man who laughs.
Exactly. Considering that a lot of our stuff is connected to the supernatural stories that might be around your region, how do you feel about Annabelle not only being removed from her box, but being put in a travel box, touring haunted locations?
Oh man, that's a good one. I wasn't expecting to talk about Annabelle today. Okay, so I'm a big fan of the Annabelle movies. I love writing and consuming supernatural stories, but I don't necessarily believe in the supernatural myself. And so I'm like, okay, if they want to take her, whatever, that's fine. If they want to take her around. However, I'm like, if ghosts do exist, you're really tempting them, aren't you, by doing that? So that I don't know. I don't know if I support it. How do you feel about it?
So our podcast, our stories are Campfire Ashes. So we talk about local legends, cryptids, ghost stories. All of our stories are based on a legend, a cryptid, a ghost, or some type of thing. We've done some stories on the Warrens. So
Ooh.
my friends and I have gone out ghost hunting. The only
Cool. Do you have like a YouTube channel? Can I watch these ghost hunts?
no, these happened before the age of YouTube, and all they would be is just me being scared to death because the only thing that happens on hunts is something happens to me. So I do
Oh,
believe in that kind of stuff because I've had some not fun ghost stories happen to me, so I do believe in that kind of thing, and I feel that like having Annabelle out of her box is a mistake.
wait, okay, I have a follow-up question for this because so with the Warren, I know the Warrens obviously were real. A lot of like the films and things were based on some of their stories. Was the Annabelle series based on like a real doll? Is that what you're
Yes.
talking about?
Yes, no, Annabelle is a real doll,
Wow.
and she is currently touring the country, going to haunted locations.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
I would
wouldn't
not do that either.
Like, so like, I have had one experience in my life where I was like, okay, that might have been a ghost. Like, I was still like, I don't know, might have been a ghost. But like, pretty much everybody around me, like my closest friends, my husband, like they all believe in the supernatural and like have all had like very intense experiences. Like one of my friends, like, actually has been like seeing ghosts since she was a child and has learned to ignore them, which I did not know until years into our friendship. Like she just never even brought it up. I was like, oh, okay. Are you all right? Like that sounds pretty traumatic. Now like so it's funny when you asked about Annabelle, this is how LA I have become because when the Annabelle movies come out, sometimes they'll bring like the Annabelle dolls that were used in the movies, like some of the props to like the movie theaters in LA. They might do that in other places too. So when you said Annabelle was touring the country, I was like, oh, it's the movie prop, like not realizing this was real dolls.
Annabelle is real. She's actually a Raggedy Ann doll, and I think was changed.
Oh my
Yeah. So I think she was changed
Wow.
that way because they couldn't get the licensing for a Raggedy Ann doll, so they just kind of changed her to what we see now. But yeah, so she's already gone to um Louisiana, and I think that some people there's a lot of like she gets to an area and then bad things start happening in the area.
Oh no. And the people in Louisiana, like they believe. So they were probably like, nope, 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 like don't bring her here.
Like they went to Louisiana, and then the Notley plantation, which has been around for like 150 years, burnt to the ground.
Oh my god, I saw the news about that. Wait,
So that happened within a day of Annabelle getting there.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's wild. Okay, so maybe they shouldn't be
They shouldn't.
bringing her all around the country. Maybe they should put her in her box and put her away.
Yeah, the next stop is in Gettysburg, and I feel that's just a mistake because Gettysburg on its own feels very haunted.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's like they're targeting these places that feel already very eerie, but yeah, we'll see if that ends up being a mistake. That's pretty crazy. So
yeah. So
wow.
Madame LaFau's house also burnt down, which was a big haunted attraction, and 11 prisoners escaped jail. This all happened within 2 days of Annabelle getting to Louisiana.
So she's cursed, is what you're telling
absolutely
me. Like,
cursed.
Is cursed.
And
we're
you're
watching this happen in real time.
yes, and you're taking her to haunted locations.
That's pretty crazy. Wow, I cannot believe she was a Raggedy Ann doll. It's making me reconsider some memories from my childhood.
I've never had a Raggedy Ann doll, but yeah, it's very creepy knowing because like in the book or in the movies you see the Annabelle doll and it's creepy as hell. But then when you see the actual Annabelle doll, you're like, oh, it's just a Raggedy Ann doll, but it's very clearly like.
Wow, like it. Do the movies follow her story very closely? Like is it like she was cursed because of like some situation she was in?
They don't really.
Do they know the story?
I don't think they really know the story. The first movie, I think, kind of follows the creation of the thing, and then the Annabelle creation was just like, we're just going to bank on money.
I went to see that, I think, the first weekend it opened, so they definitely got my money.
So, are you a plotter or a pantser? Because people are like, when do you write? How do you know how things are going to go before you get to the end? Do you have a skeleton, or you just kind of fly by night?
Yeah, so I used to be a pantser hardcore. I knew how a story began, I knew how it ended, and I might have known like one or two events in the middle, but I would just sit down at my like Word document or Scrivener and I would just write and see what happened. I don't do that anymore because one thing that I have found in getting traditionally published is that with the tight timelines and the rounds of revisions you have to go through, I just don't have time to be a pantser anymore. And frankly, now that I am a plotter, I do think my stories start out in a stronger position than they used to, because in being a pantser, like sometimes the process would be so meandering that I would have to just immediately rewrite most of the book. And I'm still rewriting huge chunks of book 2, the sequel to The Glittering Edge, but because I started out with, so the way I do it is I create like an elevator pitch, and then I flesh it out to a multi-page summary, and then I put that multi-page summary into Save the Cat, and then I write a scene by scene outline. And that has been, it's a ton of work before you even like start drafting the book. And so I understand how for some people that really takes the fun out of it. But because I really needed to know where I was going, I created this outline. And now that being said, I still made quite a few changes as I was drafting. Like I would get to a scene that I had outlined, and then I would realize that where the characters were at, like emotionally and like in their own development, like that scene didn't make sense. So maybe I moved the scene, maybe I just scrapped it and wrote a completely new scene. So I'm definitely still flexible as I'm drafting, and I have to be willing to cut some stuff. But yeah, I'm a pantser now. It's a new
You're
era
a plotter
for me.
now, yeah. But the pantser never died.
I'm a plotter now. Yes, I'm a plotter now.
You have the soul of a pantser, but you plot. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's a great way of putting it.
I am still a pantser.
Oh my gosh. You know what's funny? I think of myself as a plotter now fully, but I got an idea for a short story the other day, and normally I would sit down and flesh it out, but I just started writing, and I'm still just like writing it. I'm pantsing it, and it's the first time I've pantsed something in a really long time. So we'll see how that goes. But I think part of the fun of being a writer is like now, like you can have your guidelines, you can have your rules, but you also always have to be willing to bend them. Like, make the process fun for yourself as much as possible. And so if I'm feeling called to apparently pants a short story, then I'm gonna pants a short story. And it's been a good time, and it also feels like it kind of stretches the writing muscles in a different way.
I find that with our short story stuff, because a lot of the things I can just be like, you know what, I feel like writing this type of story today. I can write this type of story tomorrow. So I kind of look at those as writing exercises. We're just like kind of flexing. Like I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna do this today. I'm gonna write completely from the murderer's perspective.
Yeah, I love that. Totally.
So, what do you have plans? Like, what do you have coming up? What do you have on the horizon? What do you think that you might want to get done? Give us some ideas.
Yeah. So right now, truly book 2 of the Idlewood duology. So book 1's The Glittering Edge. Book 2, it has most of my focus. And that is going to be coming out in summer 2026. We don't have a firm date yet, but I will share as soon as I can. And so that is taking most of my attention. I mentioned I'm working on a high fantasy project. That would actually be an adult project, an adult fantasy project. So that is still in early stages, but I'm really excited about it. It's been so fun to write. And that's all I can really say about that at the moment. And then and then as of a few days ago, apparently I'm pantsing a short story, which I was actually thinking about documenting that process more on TikTok. Just kind of taking everyone through kind of the genesis of the idea, because maybe I'll want to try to get it published. I don't know. And even if I don't, I feel like for me, watching those process videos with writers is pretty fun. So we'll see. Maybe I'll post a bit more about that one.
Alyssa Villaire, she is the author of The Glittering Edge. This was an amazing book. If you haven't read it already, you definitely should. Wait, you have another question. What, Posky? What's your other question? So, two quick questions. What is your opinion on series that have extremely long gaps? 13 years between, like, for example, J.R.R. Martin's. Do you sympathize with these long gaps, or do they frustrate you?
Oh, man. That's a hard question. So I definitely sympathize to an extent. I have a lot of respect for writers who are like perfectionists, who are like, okay, I'm going to, take my time with the story, make sure it's as good as possible, and just like, deliver the best possible story to readers. Like, I definitely have a lot of respect for that. And I've also read some series where like the books come out 1 year apart, but because they're coming out so quickly, maybe the story isn't as developed as it could be. So I definitely have like some sympathy and understanding for series with long gaps between the books. However, if it's been like over a decade, I think like you might want to go to therapy, because you might just not be finishing this series. Like you might need to accept that I doubt the readers would accept it if George R. R. Martin was like, I'm actually never going to write this book. But like I do feel like there's maybe like a reckoning that needs to happen, or like you need to like have a real conversation with yourself and be like, am I moved on? Have I moved on past this series? Could I actually write the book and make it good? So that was kind of a non-answer. Maybe I'm cheating, but
No,
yeah, I think
that's a good idea.
Depends on the situation. Yeah.
We have one asking, are you related to Anne Hathaway?
I am not, but I have gotten that question before. That's very kind. Thank you. I think she's really pretty, so I'll take the compliment.
And a simple one here is, do you have any advice for people that are trying to be future writers? What kind of information can you give from that?
Yeah. I mean, so if you're trying to be a writer, I think like the most important thing, and Paul, curious to hear what you think about this as well, but I think the most important thing is just to keep showing up to do the work. It doesn't have to be every single day. Some people are like, you have to write every day. You don't. Like, just you have to make time for it, whatever that looks like. If it's once a week, if it's once every other week, if it's every other day, just like and finish projects, because it's not until you finish, and it's not going to be perfect, and don't expect it to be perfect. It's not until you finish the project, though, that you're able to look back on it, reread it, revise it, and make it better. Because a huge part of writing isn't just writing, it's not just drafting, it's revising. So you have to learn to do both, and you have to push through the self-doubt, which is never going to leave you alone, to be clear. Like, there's always going to be self-doubt. But just the consistency, making it a habit, I think is the most important part.
Yeah, you have to continue to write, and you have to finish, because one of the things that I do, my brain will just like, ooh, squirrel, and I will write. I have like 6 books planned out, and at least a chapter, because what I'll do is, if I have an idea of a book, I will write the first chapter and then I'll come back to it later. And of course that pushes back main fantasy book that I wrote, that I've been writing. I'm almost done with it. It was something that like I started over 20 years ago, and not trying to get your age or anything like that, but you do sound older. You seem to be aging reverse, kind of like I am. So do you remember what is remember what a zip disk
yes, I don't know if I've ever used one, but yes.
So I have a zip disk.
I know
I had a zip disk, and I had 26 chapters of the book that I'm writing right now. I had 26 chapters of the book written, and then the zip disk corrupted, and I lost everything.
No, Paul. Oh my god.
So
that's like viscerally painful.
Yes. So I lost my love of writing for 20 years. I was just like, no, not going to do it. I started writing again, and now I love it, and I've finally gotten back to the story that I wanted to get done, and now it's 2/3 done. Obviously, it looks a lot different than it did before, but I was finally able to move and get that, and now we're finally, probably next month we'll be done on that. So yeah, it's very, very important to finish something before you can go. And even if it doesn't feel like it's something you should do, you should still finish it, still go through it, push through those chapters, because once you get to the end, then you can go back and revise. But don't get into the trap of revising as you're going along, because it's going to slow down the entire process and you never get to the end of the process.
Totally agree with that. And like once, like later in your career, like if you've gotten into finishing projects, you know you can do it, and if you want to do a little bit of revising along the way, I think that's okay. Like I actually do that sometimes, where I'll like reread what I wrote the day before, and then I'll start writing fresh for the day. But yeah, I agree. I think like learning to finish projects first is the most important skill. Don't let yourself get caught up in the things that you're not happy with. You'll fix them later.
As we're saying, The Glittering Edge is an amazing book. Book 2 will be coming out next year at some point. We don't know when, and now it'll be torture for a year at least to find out what happens here, because if you read this story, you know how this book ends. You know how it ends, and that makes it worse. It makes waiting worse.
Oh, I will get it out as quickly as I can. Cannot wait for you to read it. And Paul, thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. It's been so great to get to know you over on TikTok. So excited to like know you in this context also. Like it's so cool how much you're doing. Well, thank you everybody. I can't see the chat because I'm just like on Discord, but thank you so much. And Paul, thank you for having me. This was so fun. Would love to come back in the future, and yeah, happy gaming.
Well, it definitely sounds like we're going to be bringing you back in the summer of 2026 at some point. That
would be great. Would love that.
It's like, wait, Pusky has one more. He doesn't. He's fine. I appreciate you being on and taking out the time to get here and talk to us and everything like that. This will end up on YouTube, and we'll cut this up for TikToks also. And then once I get that stuff, you're more than welcome to use it also.
Great, great. I absolutely will. That's awesome.
All right, guys. We appreciate everybody. We're like, no, let her go. We're done. And then have a great time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. All right, bye. Bye, everybody.